Welcome back to economics. We're in chapter 7 and we're taking a look at markets. If you're following along in the textbook, I need you on page 182 to get us up and going. When we start talking about markets, we're going to talk about places where companies are going to show up with either their product or their service, and consumers are going to show up to buy those finished goods or services. And the type of market, we will describe the nature and the degree of competition among companies to get into this market. And there's going to be 4 of them total, right? There's going to be 1 on either end of the spectrum, and then there's going to be 2 in the middle that we actually see in the U.S. Capitalist economy. Another way to look at it is who, if any, is your competition from the company standpoint. Okay. Can anybody get into this market and offer a product or a service? And this type will help you decide what type of a market are you in. So let's look at our first one on one end of the spectrum. And that's called a perfectly competitive market or a pure competition market. In this type of market, you have tons of both buyers and sellers, right? You got tons of options as far as producers making the stuff, and you have tons of different people you could be selling this stuff to. Another big way of defining this is you have identical products. Okay? And your third one is you're free to get in and out of the market, both from a consumption side and from a producer side. So I don't know if you've been to a farmer's market. I haven't really done a ton of them myself, but you think of that one down in Minneapolis, down by International Market Square, and it's about the best example. Now, again, pure competition or perfectly competitive, it's a theory. It's on one end of the spectrum, but the farmer's market is kind of the best example of it. Anybody can come in and buy stuff, right? There's no limit. There's no... you're driving down the road, you pull over, nobody's going to stop you from going in and buying this produce, right? Any company can show up and set up a booth. Right? The produce is virtually the same, so the apples in my, booth are not that different from the apples to the guy next to me, to the right or to the left of me. So nobody's going to mess with the price. No one's going to jack the price up or cut the price down. So take a minute and ask yourself the question, what does Mr. Clem mean by nobody's going to be able to mess with the price in a perfectly competitive market? Hit pause on the video, write down your answer, and let's see what we think. All right, welcome back. Why can companies not really mess with the price in a perfectly competitive market? The answer is if you change your price up or down, people are going to go elsewhere. If I'm in a farmer's market with 15 booths and we're all making apples and we're charging 50 cents an apple, what's going to happen if I try and charge 75 cents for my apple? People are going to look and they're going to go, so what's the difference between your 75-cent apple and everybody else's 50-cent apple? My answer is going to be, well, nothing. They're going to kind of tilt their head sideways and go, so why am I going to pay 75 cents for yours when everybody else's is exactly the same and theirs only costs 50 cents? I kind of go, yeah, good point. Right? And then they just walk away and go somewhere else. Or there are ideas from a pricing, and this is above our pay grade here, but what if we say, I'm only going to charge 25 cents for my apples? So people are going to come up and go, you're charging 25 cents for your apples. What's the difference between yours and the ones next to me? Nothing. Everybody else is selling them at 50 cents, yet you're selling yours at 25 cents. And you're telling me there's nothing wrong? Yep, mine are the same. How many people are going to be skeptical and go, there's got to be something wrong. There's got to be something he's not telling me. Why would he charge less than half when everybody else is selling it at 50 cents? Right? So everybody is pretty much going to charge the same price in this, in theory, perfectly competitive market. So again, perfectly competitive market is a theory. There are virtually no markets out there that are exactly perfectly competitive. We start sliding in a little bit, and now we're going to get to a type of market that we see in the U.S. economy. It's called a monopolistically competitive market. Following in the textbook, we're on pages 184, 185. Very similar to a purely competitive market. You have lots of people who are buying it. You got lots of people who are making it. No one company can really have a ton of change in the market. The only difference is your products are slightly different. Examples I would think would be most of your food products. Okay, what's the real difference between your snack crackers, between Ritz and Club crackers? Well, not really, right? They're crackers. And they're going to put them in different boxes. They're going to advertise them a little bit differently. But for the most part, they're crackers. You know, depending on how you price, here's where you could maybe price things a little bit different. And you go, well, what's the difference between a Ritz and a Club cracker? Well, mine's got this, where theirs has got that. Oh, well, maybe I'm willing to pay a little bit more for one of them because it happens to have some characteristic that I like. So your monopolistically competitive market, the difference is your products, right? Your products are slightly different. Still tons of people out there to buy it, still lots of people making it. Most people can enter and exit the market, but your products are a little bit different. This actually happens in the current capitalist system we're at in the U.S. Another example, which is not a great example now, spring 2020 with the coronavirus, but I could say, is there a place in the Dassel-Cokato area where you can get food? Just food in general. You go, well, you could do the drive-through at, Subway, or if the Dairy Queen was up and running, them. But you could also go to the grocery store, or you could go to Broadway Bees, or you could go to Lucky Kitchen, or you could go to, the convenience stores and go to Casey's, or go to Cenex, or go to Jack's, or in Dassel, you could go to Sunrise Cafe. You'd have lots of options, right? Their products are different, right? The stuff they're selling at Lucky Kitchen is different from the pizza that you're getting at Jack's, or even the pizza at Jack's versus the pizza at Casey's versus the pizza at Cenex. They're a little different, okay? But you still have lots of options to go get food. We work our way to the right, and we look at a type of market where there's only a couple, right? This is called an oligopoly. And again, most of these are dealing from the supply side of things, or how many companies are out there making this product or this service, right? So there's only a couple of companies that are providing this product or service. There's a decent amount of barriers to get into this market. And for me, the best example of an oligopoly in our area would be trash collection. And oligopolies are on page 186 in your textbook. You have 3 or 4 companies you could go get your trash collected by. Mumford Sanitation, Randy Sanitation, a couple others out there. It's not like you got 15 or 20. You maybe have 4 or 5. You could look at buying a vehicle in the Dassel-Cokato area. You can go to Holt, you can go to Cokato's, you can go to Autos by Andy, or maybe even Kingston Auto, right? So you got a couple, but you don't have 10 or 15 like you could go get some type of a food source in the area. You look at, mowing lawn. There's a couple options out there, but there's not an infinite amount. So your difference between your oligopoly and your monopolistic competition is how many people are producing this stuff. Do you have a lot, or do you have a few? Now we jump forward to the other end of the spectrum, the far end of the spectrum, and we talk about something called a monopoly. That's on page 188, 189. A monopoly, there's only one entity making this product or this service. And the closest example I can think of would be the U.S. military, and that's combining the Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Marines. Okay? I don't know of a private company in our economy, and again, we're talking U.S. economy. I don't know any entity out there that would compete with those four branches of the military. You can say, well, there's this private company that does this, that, or the other thing, but they don't have both the equipment and the manpower like, say, the military does. Now, if you went to a different country, you say, well, what about this country's military? Yeah, but you're kind of locking yourself down to that country and say, well, who else could do the military like that country could? So monopoly is a theory. There's only one option. Everybody's got to go to this one option. Huge barriers for any other country to get into the market versus perfectly competitive where anybody can get in, anybody can get out, tons of options, all the products are identical. Theory on one end of the spectrum, monopoly theory on the other end of the spectrum. Monopolistic competition, you got lots of options. Oligopoly, you only got a few options.